We have the world at our fingertips, inspiration in our touch, and power in our hands. Our hands, gentle enough to hold the next generation, yet strong enough to build movements that can change the world. Our hands can build relationships, frame ideas, and empower communities. We have the ability to share and imagine, create and comfort, love and heal the world around us. And it doesn't stop there. Right here, in our hands, we have the power to save a life. If you see a teen or adult suddenly collapse, call 911 and push hard and fast in the center of the chest.
The power is in your hands.
Good morning, everybody. Summer, thanks so much. My name is Rich Roddick. I'm the co-founder of Fahrenheit Advisors. My business partner is Keith Middleton. And this year, we're lucky to be the co-chairs for the Richmond Heart Ball. And as we've been working towards this Heart Ball this year, we've learned an awful lot about the impact American Heart Association has. And that video you just saw, I think, really speaks to me, and I hope it speaks to you as well, that we have the power in our hands to save lives. And simply, we need to take a few minutes to understand something like hands-only CPR. Summer mentioned a few of the statistics of how many cardiac events happen outside of a hospital. And unfortunately, less than half the time, bystanders are prepared to do something. We saw this play out on the national stage when Damar Hamlin had a heart event at a football game. And luckily, he was surrounded by a bunch of medical professionals that knew exactly what to do and likely saved his life with CPR. So the mission today is to teach all of us, demystify hands-only CPR so you're prepared to act in the event of an emergency. So I applaud you. I thank you for being here. It is absolutely critical that we take this step. So today, the goal is raise awareness about what you can do as a bystander with hands-only CPR, to teach you a little bit about AEDs. We want to, again, remove the barriers that prevent people from taking action in an emergency. So today you're going to walk away with those skills. I think a really great goal for all of us to have is that at least one person in all of our households understand hands-only CPR. Most of the time, cardiac events are not going to happen next to a trained medical professional. So that's us. We need to be prepared to do something. Don't let the day be the last day that you think about hands-only CPR. And hopefully this baseline knowledge in demystifying hands-only CPR will help you then take the next step to actually get certification. As Summer said, this is awareness. It's a training to help you understand what hands-only CPR is, but it's not certification. But you don't need to be certified to take action in an emergency and potentially save somebody's life. So don't let that stop you. Today, you'll be prepared. We are going to, again, walk through what hands-only CPR is, when to take action and use hands-only CPR, talk a little bit about the difference between cardiac arrest and a heart attack, what to do when you call 911. Again, we'll talk about what an AED is, ways to take action in an emergency, and handle some questions. Again, I hope that the call to action for you today is not only you learning hands-only CPR, but paying this forward to other folks in your organization and your family so that they're prepared to help. And also, I think it's imperative that we help the rest of our community that can't join us in a situation like this. So thanks for doing that. We'll have some closing thoughts as well. Again, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this and helping train our community to respond in an emergency. And with that, we were blessed a few weeks ago to train a bulk of our team here at Fahrenheit Advisors, and Michelle Gossip handled that training. She is the cardiology program manager at VCU Health. So I'm going to turn it over to the professional and let her walk us through our training today.
Good afternoon, or it still could be good morning. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, still good morning. Thank you so much for being with us today. Remembering that today, what we're hoping to is, I love the word demystify. I also love the word empower. So what our hope is that when you leave this session today, this awareness session today, that you feel empowered. You may not know everything, and that's okay, but what you feel is empowered to step in an emergency, know what steps to do, and feel confident that even in chaos, that you are aware and ready for CPR or cardiac event. So again, my name is Michelle Gossip, and I am with VCU Health. I am passionate about CPR training. I do that in my healthcare world, but I'm more passionate about bringing awareness to the community and the importance of CPR in the community. So what are our goals for today? Our goals are to learn what is hands-only CPR, what to do in an emergency, and to feel empowered to step in and evoke help if it's needed. So what is CPR? For the non-medical people out there, CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And so what you're hoping to do is to mimic the work of the heart during CPR, to push blood to the vital organs and help give that person a chance at survival by imitating the workflow of the heart. So what is hands-only CPR? I'm sure some of you have had some level of certification, or at the very least, you've seen on TV, mouth breathing to chest compressions. Well, what we're bringing to you today is a new spin on CPR. So for the person who does not have to perform this kind of CPR every day, remembering the breaths to compressions, that can be very confusing. And oftentimes it might lend to someone not evoking help in a situation because you don't feel confident in your skill set. So what we're here today to talk to you about is that hands-only CPR can be just as effective in the few minutes after a cardiac arrest as the mouth breathing to compressions. The most important thing is recognizing that there's an emergency, calling 911, and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest. So what is a cardiac arrest? Another term that's used, a cardiac arrest is when the heart stops, period. There's no blood flow to the major organs, not to the brain, not to the lungs, not to any of the other part of the body. So CPR is, a cardiac arrest is an absolute cardiac emergency. However, there are other terms that are used synonymously with cardiac arrest, and that is a heart attack. So a heart attack and a cardiac arrest are not the same thing. Cardiac arrest, if you had to put it in levels of emergency, cardiac arrest being the highest, well, the heart attack's right behind that. So a heart attack is when a blockage occurs in the vessels around the heart. So it's a blood flow problem, and you have chest pain, and it is an emergency. Very important, still call 911 and seek emergent care immediately once those symptoms start. And a heart attack can lead to a cardiac arrest, meaning you could start with a heart attack and then you could ultimately have your heart stop from an electrical problem. It's hey, your heart electricity went haywire and it stopped. And that is when you would introduce doing CPR. Making sure I follow and catch everything. So about 1 in 10 people suffer from a cardiac arrest in an out-of-hospital environment, and quite often a cardiac arrest happens most frequently in the home. So not only is it important for you to learn these skills today, but it's important for you to teach these skills to others. Now, I believe that some of you guys may have mannequins, which is great. I empower you that either during this session today or after this session later, maybe in private if you feel more comfortable with that you get this mannequin, get it out, try the compressions that I show you today, so that way you can get a feel for how this would happen in an emergent situation. You know, Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention there is a lack of CPR training. It's a health equity issue. Unfortunately, bystander rates and AED use rates are less in minority areas. Unfortunately, women are at a more disadvantage when it comes to the performance of CPR. And so we have a calling to make sure that every person is trained in CPR and every person has an opportunity to receive this life-saving vital information.
Keep your elbows straight and position your shoulders. Do not bring your knees.
Of all the moments you share with your best friend, the greatest could be the moment you save her life. Every second counts in cardiac arrest. Learn hands-only CPR and be the difference for someone you love.
Wow. I don't know about you, but watching that video gets me a little verklempt. So what can we do to learn hands-only CPR? So first of all, let's make sure we understand that what I'm going to show you today, the information I'm going to share with you today is intended for teens and adults. Children and infants, I would recommend that you receive some level of certification, and we won't be covering that today. So remember, teens and adults, this is primarily for teens and adults. Very important 2 steps. Well, I'm going to add a third. Recognizing that there's an emergency, calling 911 and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest. I know that everyone on this call could do those 3 steps. Recognizing that there's an emergency, feeling empowered to call 911, and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest. So when you call 911, there are some important things that you need to be able to communicate with them. I'm going to demonstrate CPR, but I do want to give you a couple of pearls. So if you're on a cell phone and you're calling 911 and you're in the immediate rundown of getting ready to start CPR, you can put your cell phone on speakerphone. Many localities will talk you through performing CPR over the cell phone. Some don't. But having that speakerphone on allows you to communicate with the dispatcher on the phone. They're getting the sense of the urgency of the event that is occurring, and you can help talk them through your surroundings, how to get into the building. Also, I would encourage you, if you aren't alone, to make sure that you send someone out to meet EMS to get them to you as quickly as possible. So let's demonstrate some hands-only CPR. We talked about it. Now, how do you do it? So if you have a mannequin, now would be the time to grab it. If you don't, that's okay. Listen, you'll take something away from this today, and then you can practice on your own time. So again, these are the skills that I use. Now's the time to get some practice and see if this works for you. So one of the things that I like, and for anybody who has had any type of training outside of this, knows of Annie, are you okay? So I would say, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? You know, picture yourself, put yourself in a scenario where you come around the corner and the person's on the ground. You don't know how they got there. You don't know what caused this event. The first thing you're going to go do is go down to their side and be like, are you okay? Are you okay? Well, if they wake up, then they're fine. They don't need CPR. But if they're unresponsive, blue or gray in color, or not breathing, then you need to step to the next step, which is calling 911. You know, everybody, I don't have my cell phone on me right this second, but everyone has a cell phone. You can call from your cell phone, put it on speakerphone, and tell the dispatcher what the emergency is. The next thing is finding your landmark and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest. A little thing I like to do is if you think about an imaginary line running down the center of your body and an imaginary line running across your chest, where that meets, that flat bone, where that meets, that's the location of your compressions. I'm right-handed, so I put my left hand down on the mannequin. Okay, I lace my right hand over. I was watching that video and watching those kids, and it makes me think about the fact that I just taught some young kids yesterday. And if they can do it, I feel pretty confident that we can all do it. So left hand in the center of the chest, right hand crossed over the left hand. Again, I'm right-handed. This is the chance to feel, is this the way you feel strongest? And then I'm going to push down in the center of the chest. Now my mannequin clicks. That's kind of a indicator that I'm pushing down hard enough in the center of the chest. I'm not pushing fast enough, but for demonstrations purposes, I'm pushing hard enough. What you're trying to achieve is about 1.5 to 2 inches in depth. That's pretty deep. I like to tell people who are lay people who are not in healthcare profession, if you feel like you're pushing hard enough, maybe push a little harder. We would be instinctively trying not to hurt the person, so we might not push as hard as we could. I would say about 1.5 to 2 inches is the depth that you're looking for. So again, putting that hand in the center of the chest, and give a couple presses on your mannequin so that way you can make sure that you feel confident, and then kick up the pace a little bit. Now, I know that a lot of you probably know Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. I'm not going to sing it for you, but if you think about the song in your mind, that is the beat that you're trying to achieve with your CPR, and it looks like this. Now, again, I'm doing this on a table. It looks pretty easy. I'm actually going to get on the floor so you can see what that looks like on the floor, okay? So, excuse me. All right. So again, in my experience, CPR, cardiac arrest never happens in an elegant manner. So what you would hope to do is find hard surface to work with. Again, remember how we found the center of the chest, line down the middle, line across the center of the chest, that center point where those would meet. I use my left hand. I put my left hand in the center of the chest, cross over my right hand. Now, when I'm doing CPR on the floor, if you ever get a chance to do CPR on the floor, it looks very different. It feels very different than on the table. On the floor, you're going to work all the way from your knees up to your hips, and the power is going to come out of your hands. So if you can tell, I can get right over top of my person and see this doesn't click, and that's okay. I know that I'm still going about 1.5 to 2 inches. And what I'm using is that hard surface on the floor accompanied with the sternum to compress the heart and push blood out into the vital organs. It's that simple. Yes, you will sweat after doing CPR. Yes, you are going to be tired. But even as you become tired, you're still doing the one thing that can help this person survive. So I encourage you to step in when called on, feel empowered that you can recognize someone as having an emergency, calling 911, and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest. And I'll be honest with you, in my experience, there's only 2 reasons I would stop. If the person was awake, clearly awake and pushing me to get off, or unless those emergency providers that I've called get there and relieve me from my duty. So, what is an AED? Some of you guys may be wondering what AED stands for. Automated External Defibrillator. So I know some of you guys probably have seen this on TV, and it looks very dramatic on TV that when the doctor calls for the paddles and they shock the person, and the person rises off the bed. That in theory is what an AED does. But AEDs are now in local buildings, your grocery store, gyms, where you work, where you play. I encourage you to know where your AED is in all environments that you enter. I think it's important always to be ready for an emergency. I say this in my trainings when I go out and train. If I'm in scrubs and I go into a local facility, someone's going to call on me, and I need to know how to help in an emergency. I know where the exits are. I always know where the AED is, and I encourage you to do the same. So in an event like this, you can do one of a couple things. The AED is a very important device in cardiac arrest. If I were alone and I didn't know where it was, I would not take the time to go get it or go find it. I know how to do CPR. EMS is on their way. I'm going to feel confident in that, and I'm going to do what I know. If there's a group of people, I would strongly encourage you to send someone to go get the AED. I would also encourage you to send someone to call 911. You don't have to take on those responsibilities yourself. If the AED comes to the side of wherever you are, continue to do CPR as someone else troubleshoots getting that AED on the patient. Then follow the prompts. The main thing is turn the device on and it will talk you through the rest of the way. So to cover a couple of questions that often get asked when I do CPR sessions, is can I get in trouble for doing CPR? Maybe I don't feel confident in my skills, or maybe I didn't put my hands in the right place. No, you cannot get in trouble for doing what you feel like is the right thing to do in an emergency situation. You would be covered under the Good Samaritan law. And so please don't let that be a deterrent to you offering assistance in an emergency. And then another question I often get is, can I make things worse? Well, I don't know that there's anything worse than someone who doesn't have a pulse and is not breathing and needs CPR than not doing CPR. So even if I might start doing CPR and I feel like my hand placement is not quite right, I could take a second, adjust my hand placement, and then continue on with CPR. The worst thing that you could do is doing nothing. All right, I think that about covers it for me. So remember, 2 steps, and I'm going to add a third. Recognizing that someone is having an emergency, calling 911, and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest. I hope that, although it's been quick today, I hope that when you walk out today that you feel empowered, that you would know what to do in an emergency. And I hope that I have been able to demystify a little bit concerns or information related to cardiac arrest. I turn it over to Summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a quick learning, but of course we're going to record this, send this out, but I just wanted to call out a couple action items for us today. So what can you do to make a difference in all of this? And we really encourage you to take charge of your own health. And so we have a variety of ways and virtual activities that are available on heart.org. And I'll put that link in the follow-up emails that your team lead can share with you. But personally, you can take the first action yourself, and that's for your own personal care. So if you don't have a routine checkup with your doctor, we highly encourage you to schedule one today. All right, and then the next one is we have an app, and would love for you all to look it up and download it. You can look it up on the App Store or Google Play. There's fun 14 interactive lessons, and if you're competitive like me, you'll want to get through them all really quickly and be on the leaderboard. So that's exciting. So find our app, and that just might be something that you can share with your family as well. And then spread the word. This is our big initiative this year. Rich and Keith have been large voices with this campaign and getting it out, and we really have a hashtag. So if you have enjoyed this today, spread the word. We have a hashtag called hashtag Be the Beat RVA. So share that with your community, get people involved with us locally. We would love to work with any company to share this mission with them. And then your voice matters. So join You're the Cure. And that is, if you just text to that mission, to that text code, you'll get updates with our advocacy team, and use your voice in our community. That's another large way that you can join our efforts. And then lastly, there is a whole, and I'm going to put this in the recap email for you as well, a direct link to our CPR and ECC trainings available for you to just kind of peruse at your leisure. We encourage you just to dive in a little bit and really explore this in your area and within your family as well. So we wanted to save some time at the end for some questions, because there's always great questions that Michelle gets. So I'm going to bring Michelle back up here. If you would just put your questions in the chat, We will be able to read those questions, and then she can answer them. So we're gonna pull up the chat real quick so she can see them. Okay.
I know you have questions out there.
If doing correct CPR, will you break a rib?
Great question. One I get almost every time I do CPR training, and thank you for bringing it up. So the truth of the matter is very possibly. If you are doing chest compressions at that 1.5 to 2 inch depth, oftentimes there could be some breakage of the ribs. I know that seems terrible, and it is. However, keep going. So think about what's happened with a cardiac arrest. The heart has stopped. If you stop doing CPR, then the heart is still stopped. You are the workload of the heart. So it is okay to continue to do compressions even after you have experienced a rib break. So yes, you can have that. And my encouragement to you is to continue to do CPR. What else you got?
See. Does it matter if the airway is not open?
Great question. Okay, so a couple things. Do not recommend that you do any type of mouth sweep or anything like that. If you can maybe see that there's a blockage in the mouth, you might be able to turn the head a little bit just to help facilitate that coming out. But otherwise, if the person has already suffered a cardiac arrest, what caused their cardiac arrest is really immaterial. It's important to do CPR to continue the blood flow until emergency services can get there. Great question.
What if the person has a pacemaker or a defibrillator?
Great question. Gosh, you guys have got good questions. So again, if a person has a pacemaker or defibrillator and they had a rhythm that would have to activate their pacemaker or defibrillator, it probably has already been activated. If you go and assess the situation and the person is blue or gray in color, not breathing, and lifeless, then it's okay to do CPR. Again, finding your landmarks, just like I showed you in the center of the chest on the sternum, it should not disrupt either the pacemaker or the defibrillator. Do CPR.
Okay. What if you find someone unresponsive in their bed? Do you move them?
Oh, great question. Again, it never happens in an elegant situation. So one of two things, you have two scenarios here. If you can move the person to the floor without injuring yourself, then you can try that. If that seems like a monumental task and does not feel like you could get the person to the floor without injuring yourself in the meantime, because again, if you injure yourself, then you can't evoke help to someone else. Then I would hop on the bed and do CPR in the bed. Is it the best scenario? No, but it's the scenario you're given and you're going to do the best you can with the scenario you're given. So again, if you're going to injure yourself, I wouldn't recommend, and if it's going to take a long time to get the person to the floor. If not, you can do it quickly. Yes, do that. If not, CPR in the bed, in my opinion, will be the best way.
Okay, here's one. What's the best way to check for a pulse?
Well, checking for a pulse is a tricky thing. So, all right. In CPR trainings, not today, again, not encouraging you to try to check a pulse. This is not an easy situation. The best pulse for you to check would be the one that's in the neck. Now, here's my caution. You have a pulse in your thumb. If your thumb comes close to you checking the pulse in the neck, you're going to feel your pulse. So it is 2 fingers, not thumb, 2 fingers right here at the neck. Again, not what I would recommend in this situation. If you're not familiar with checking a pulse, you could spend a lot of time doing that, and you could use your thumb and feel your own pulse. Again, if the person is blue or gray in color, unresponsive, or not breathing, then you can assume to do CPR. But a good question.
And then is there a certain time you use AED when compressions aren't working?
So if you have an AED, and you apply it in the CPR and emergency situation, the AED is a computer technology. It is able to know whether a shock should be delivered or not. If it needs to deliver a shock, it'll analyze that rhythm and deliver the shock. If it doesn't, then it's going to tell you to do CPR. And then after the first time that the AED does that, it kind of becomes a counter after that. And at every 2-minute intervals, it's going to tell you to stop doing CPR. It's going to reanalyze that rhythm. It's going to give a shock if a shock is advised. And if not, then it's going to continue to tell you to do CPR. Did that answer the question, I think? Hopefully. If not, ask again in a different way. Happy to answer.
And then can you describe again your arms being locked out to create energy required?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll show you on the table. But again, I think if you have a mannequin, this is your opportunity to do this on the floor. But for today's purposes, this is how, and again, I'm right-handed. This is your chance to see if this way that I do works for you best, or maybe you need to switch which hand is your top hand. Also, I'll share, I'm a honest person. After years of nursing, I have arthritis in my hands. So if I were called to do CPR for a long period of time, I wouldn't be able to keep my hand in one position for a really long period of time. I'd have to switch back and forth. So again, I'm right-handed. I use my left hand in the center of the chest. I am using mainly the ball of my hand in the center of the chest. And let me show you why. Can you see this mannequin like this? So if I use the ball of my hand in the center of the chest, my power comes straight down and goes straight into the mannequin. If my hand is flat on the chest like this, then my power is going to the side, not straight down. The heart sits right under the sternum. You want to go straight down with the power of your compressions. So again, left hand, cross over with your right. I basically squeeze my chest and lock out my elbows. And then I begin my compressions. If you were here with me, you'd be able to slide a sheet of paper underneath my hand. All that's on the mannequin is the ball of my hand. I am basically using my right hand to kind of pull my left hand back and then elicit that power straight down in my hands. Okay. Now, again, if I'm doing CPR and let's say I've done, 30 seconds, a minute of CPR, it won't take long that you'll get tired. In that event, then I would just very quickly switch to my right hand at the bottom and my left hand. You wouldn't even notice it if you weren't paying attention. And then 30 seconds, a minute, if my hand is tired, then I'm going to switch back the other way. And I can do that back and forth. Now, something I didn't cover in the training, but something that's important to talk about. What if you're not by yourself? What if you're amongst other people? Whether they're trained or not, whether they have awareness of CPR or not, it doesn't really matter. I can show you by doing CPR, hey, you see how I'm pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest? I'm starting to get tired and I need some help. On the count of 3, I'm going to have you step in. 1, 2, 3. You kind of sit back on your heels, catch your breath. You would want the other person to be across from you if the space and the surroundings allowed that. So that way the two of you can make eye contact with one another. That person would then start doing CPR. And let's say they're not CPR aware. And you say, hey, push your elbows in, tighten your elbows up, push a little harder. You're pushing too hard. Coach them through CPR. Then when you start to see them get tired, you can say, hey, I see you're getting tired. I'm going to come back in now, okay? On the count of 3, they're doing their CPR. 1, 2, 3. And then I come back on the chest. Minimal time of compressions off the chest. That's what you're really trying to get to. So even if someone's not CPR aware and you're having an emergency, you can bring them in and teach them in a minute, just watching what you're doing.
Just for clarification, are you below the rib cage or in the center of it?
Okay, so you are in the center of, the sternum sits in the center. The ribs come up and the sternum is that middle bone that's in the center of the chest. That is where you're pushing. So if you take your hand and kind of run it down between your breasts, right in the middle, that flat bone that sits right in the middle, that is your location, right in the center of the chest. Great question.
Yeah. Okay, so is it as effective as the breaths? So is hands-on CPR as effective as the breaths?
Yes, and let me tell you why. So we know that moving the blood that's already in the body is the most important thing. Not that breathing is not important, not that that wouldn't be an important thing if healthcare providers are involved or in some type of healthcare structured environment, that would work. But in the lay environment, for someone who has not had to deliver a breath before, and especially in the time of COVID, there could also be vomitus. It's just a situation in which compressions can be just as effective in the first few minutes after someone experiences an out of hospital cardiac arrest. Again, recognizing that someone's having a cardiac emergency, calling 911 and pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest.
And do you need to remove someone's shirt to perform CPR?
No, you do not. If you need to see the landmark, you might do that, but it is not necessary to remove someone's shirt to do CPR. Now, what I will say is kind of circling back to the AED, you may have to cut, rip, remove, pull up someone's shirt to be able to apply an AED. But to do CPR, if this person was clothed, I would just, come in between, find that landmark again, straight down the center of the body, straight across the chest, where that meets, and then I would start my CPR.
What do you do if someone feels like they're going to have a heart attack, but they haven't yet?
Okay, so great question. Couple things. So remember when we talked about the difference between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack? Let's just review that. As someone who has worked with cardiac arrest and heart attack survivors, I think it's very important for us to understand the difference between those two things. So let's start with a heart attack. A heart attack is what you think of when you think of those quintessential symptoms of chest pain, indigestion, arm pain, jaw pain. Ladies, we have a little bit different symptoms than our male counterparts. Typically, male counterparts had that traditional, chest pain. Our ladies often have nausea, vomiting, flu-like symptoms. We could be tired, which, I feel tired every day, so we'll just go with that. Now, that can lead to a cardiac arrest. Heart attack, still a medical emergency. Seek attention as quickly as possible. Do not drive yourself to the hospital, call 911. That can digress to a cardiac arrest, which then the heart stops and you would need to perform CPR. Does that answer?
That answers.
All right.
Yes. And then just another one, is CPR appropriate for someone you think is overdosing?
Okay, so remember when I said that the heart has stopped, okay? It does not matter what got to that point. If you found the person and the person's heart has stopped, then CPR is the treatment in the event that the heart has stopped. EMS will be on their way, and if there are medications to give that person in relation to that overdose, then they will administer them. But in that event, the heart has stopped, then CPR needs to be done.
Perfect. Another one just came in. How do you perform CPR on a woman that may have a bigger chest?
Great question, because none of us are the same size. So in the back of your mind, remember, 1.5 to 2 inches is the depth of compression, and that looks different on different people. Think about maybe a frail, thin person. Think about someone who is thicker in the chest. So again, imagine if you kind of laid back, especially if a lady is larger in the chest and the breasts kind of separate, that flat bone, we all have it, is right there in the center of the chest. Again, center and across, find that landmark in the center of the chest and begin to do CPR. For someone who has a thicker chest, then you may have to push harder to get that 1.5 to 2 inches. Again, when I was saying about your compressions, I always say, do your compressions, push a little harder. We probably would tend to hold back a little bit. So again, 1.5 to 2 inches. And in that event, you might have to push a little harder.
And then Wanda says, if it appears obvious death meaning rigor is present, do you still start CPR if the family member states a DNR papers? Do you not start CPR?
That's a complicated scenario. And I would have to defer to my EMS colleagues on how they would handle that. If the paperwork's there and available, then I would say no. I mean, the person's already made their wishes known and the paperwork's valid and available, then I guess in that scenario, I would probably not do CPR. But I would have to be certain that there's paperwork there to support that. That's a great question, though. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for being a great audience and wonderful questions. And I know that if any questions come up later, that Summer will help field those questions and we'll definitely get you answers, get you
Yes.
answers to them. So thank you.
We'll recap this, put this back in an email to you. If you would like to donate to American Heart to keep this mission going, we have these kits back here that we would love to get out into communities. Any donation helps us do that. There's so many community partners that we work with that we would love to get these kits in their hands. It does come with the DVD and then also a link for an online lesson for them to see, to view it online. So it's a great life-saving skill to get back out to our community. If you, I think Whitney's putting it in the chat now, the link to donate, and it's in there. So we'll be happy to get these out to our community. Thank you for joining. I will recap all this in a little bit to you in an email. Have a great day, everyone.